And that's what we're going to do right now. Joining us, we have Mr. Ken Young for another edition of Tech Briefs to talk about the biggest stories in tech over the last week. And as always, it was not a slow week. But this week in particular, privacy was such a huge issue. It feels like privacy, data security, all of that came to the forefront in a big way. And to start off, let's talk about Ring. Ring has not had a very good week. Ken, you want to walk us through some of these things?
So I think not having a good week is an understatement. Look, I think as we approach the Christmas holiday week, I think it's important to know that if you are planning on buying a Ring smart lock, doorbell, or anything like that from Nest or anything like that, be aware of the privacy implications here. And I think for if anything that was talking about 2019, Ring has had a privacy cloud hanging over it for the past year. It all started with revelations that the company, which is Amazon owned, is actually working with law enforcement to kind of create this neighborhood-esque type of surveillance network. And so people are outraged at what's going on with this, and Amazon's making no apologies for such a program. But it's also been revealed that these Ring doorbells are prone to hacking, and there's been instances where media outlets have been looking more in depth at this data that's been revealed, and say like they can actually track who's coming and going around your house, and this is kind of causing some panic amongst some people.
Right.
And what we're talking about this week is that this is actually to emphasize all these other data breaches and privacy issues. There's been a data breaches, actually multiple data breaches this week, where I believe like almost 4,500 to nearly 5,000 people have reportedly had their information stolen by hackers. But Amazon and Ring have denied that there's been any data breach at all, and blamed that any potential intrusion is the result of customers having their own information, their login and password and credentials stolen because they've reused it on other sites and applications that have been impacted by their own data breaches. So this is...
well, I was just going to say, I mean, that is an issue as far as, yeah, you can't be reusing the same password over and over. But I mean, this is just, there's so much of it happening. The company really needs to take some kind of answer other than that. I feel like there's a lot more to it, because one of the big things that was happening this week too is just all these instances of people hacking into cameras and then speaking through them, and we have video evidence of all of that going on. So there's just so much that happened with that, and like you mentioned, the 4,500 customers so far. That's what's been reported. Accessed through third parties that get in there and then they're able to access these devices or take that information. It's a lot that's going on, and that's just been such a huge issue this week in tech. That's why it's definitely one of our things to cover here. And you can read more about it at Flipboard and at Digital Trends too, as far as what's going on. But Ring, be aware, I just bought the entire Ring home security system myself, so I made sure that I have the two-factor authentication on now. But that's something that's out there. There's a lot that's going to be going on with that, and I feel like that's a trend that's going to be happening for a little while. Another big report this week came out from the New York Times, and this is a pretty shocking one. It's one that I guess, in hindsight you think, oh yeah, that makes sense, but you don't really realize how accessible your location data is. And so this report is part of a series. It's called One Nation Tracked, and there's going to be some different articles that come out about it. It's from Stuart A. Thompson and Charlie Warzel of the New York Times. And what they did is they got access to some of these giant data sets of location data. So your phone, when you have your location on, it's pinging where you are all the time. And if somebody gets that information, they're saying the data sets don't say who it is, so it is anonymous, but it tracks you everywhere you go. And so when they got access to some of these data sets, which are owned by all kinds of different companies, who can get this, they can sell it, it's pretty much unregulated. What they could do is they went in and they just tracked like one person's ping, tracked where that person went. It pinged from here, here, here. All of a sudden, boom, they get to somebody's house, and then you can correlate that data and figure out who someone is. They said in some instances, it took as little as 30 seconds to figure out who someone was and get all of their information and see where they're going. And that is just so unnerving, hearing about this, and this is just part of what's going to be revealed, part of these revelations when it comes to our location data.
Oh, sure. And look, privacy is like by name is probably just a word at this point. And
yeah.
You can say like, oh, as you check in at a location, or you tag yourself in an Instagram photo, or in a tweet, or whatever it is. Like, I think the thing people are fooled by is that they believe that the terms of service is saying, look, we want these companies say we won't track you, we won't release any personal information about you, and to a certain degree that's true. But there's no actual enforcement in place to protect you should the worst happen. And I think the point in the New York Times article is clear. Like, there needs to be some sort of a regulation in place to track to protect people from their location, whether it's some sort of a GDPR or a privacy policy. California has taken some steps to that, but I think I think there's been steps by lawmakers to enact something more federal across the United States and even abroad. But I think this is pretty damning of a report. I mean, there's been like millions of tags that the New York Times came across through a source, and they could track people, including like people that shouldn't be tracked, those that are protecting the president, those from Secret Service, those in the Pentagon, those in other classified installations. But I don't think that, if you believe that, your data, your location is anonymized, like your data is not tagged specifically to you, your location can actually be mapped, as this report shows, to say, like, look, I may not know that this is Ken, but tracking from here to an In-N-Out Burger to the Caltrain to the airport or to Digital Trends, they will know that it's going to be me. They're going to know my pattern, and whether it's for malicious purposes or for commercial purposes, like there's always ways that data is more valuable than anything else out there.
Yeah, it's really unnerving and illuminating, this interview. So I suggest people read it, just because it really gives you a full, bigger picture of where your data is going. Also, now we know Ken goes to In-N-Out a lot. So, but that's a whole other issue. So that's a huge one, though, from this week, talking about that report from the New York Times. Let's go on to something that's a little bit lighter. Let's talk about some big news coming from Samsung, and with the possible unveiling. Well, it's a leak is really what happened. We have some pictures that came out, and it was a picture of this possible foldable screen Samsung clamshell style phone. So think about more like the Motorola Razr. It looks very similar, actually, at least as far as functionally, how the new Motorola Razr foldable phone works. And these leaks kind of fall in line with a lot of what we already anticipated Samsung to be doing. So I kind of feel like these are a lot more legitimate than a lot of other leaks that we see.
So I think this kind of puts the meme to rest. Like, will it bend? I think, you're talking about with the iPhone back in the day, is like, does it bend in your pocket? Now you can figure out if the Samsung Galaxy will actually bend. I think with typical foldable phones and Samsung, I think the question you have to ask is, will it break when you take off the plastic film on the screen? So, this is the second time that Samsung's will come out with a foldable device. They're ahead of many other people, like Huawei and Motorola, and even Microsoft is coming out with a foldable device, I believe by next year, actually. So I think this is going to be very, very interesting to see. I think the fact that if you look at all the foldable devices these days, that are available, that will be available, they're priced at about over $1,000, and it's priced way more. They're more expensive than the top tier phones now, the Galaxies, the iPhones, and anything else out there. So this is, they need to reduce the cost of these foldables to actually make it more enticing for people. Whether or not Samsung's actually if this is going to be a hit remains to be seen, just because, that after they tentatively revealed, I believe, earlier this month or last month, that they sold 1 million Galaxy Folds, but then they walked that back like maybe a week later. So who knows what the real amount is? I think they were gunning for 1 million phones to be sold, Galaxy Fold phones to be sold, but certainly not hitting that goal. Wondered whether this new form factor, this clamshell, will actually make that big of a difference. But with the fact that Motorola Razr is bringing back this vintage device, who knows?
I think it's going to be a big seller, but it's definitely going to be interesting. I think it's kind of illuminating what we're going to be seeing coming up in the next few weeks as we see phone manufacturers come out with some of their new designs and this foldable technology. I know we need to get to a break. I know this is our time, and we always try to pack in as much as possible for everybody's listening. Don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you get podcasts. 2 Tech Briefs. Ken, As always, thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. Happy holidays.
Same to you.